Senator Feingold.
Hey, Mr. Chairman. General, I want to commend you for your decision to try Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and other 9/11 plotters in federal court. It's about time that we bring these criminals to justice, and your decision shows the world that this country stands firmly behind its legal system and the Constitution. As you know, I don't agree with every decision you've made in this area. I remain skeptical about the decision to try 5 other Guantanamo detainees and military commissions. But too much of the criticism directed at using our federal courts has not been based in fact. Some conservative commentators have gone so far as to call it scaremongering, and they have called for it to stop. More than 200 terrorism defendants have been prosecuted in our federal court system since 9/11, and federal prisons securely hold more than 300 inmates whose cases were terrorism-related. Zacharias Moussaoui was successfully prosecuted and convicted in federal court of conspiring with al-Qaeda on the 9/11 attacks and is serving a life sentence. And yet I don't remember hearing the kind of uproar about the decision to try Moussaoui in federal court that we're hearing now. So it's a little disheartening that critics of your decision seem to have so little faith in our system of justice. So, Mr. Attorney General, how does your decision to seek justice in federal court support our fight against terrorism?
Well, I think that I have great faith in our system, and it's not a speculative faith. It's based on experience. The cases that you mentioned, the familiarity I have from the federal courts, having been a prosecutor in those courts, gives me the belief that we're going to have an ability to maintain courtrooms in a way that is consistent with what I think we want. There'll be a level of decorum. I think that we will have an ability to introduce the evidence that we seek to introduce, and that our courts are capable of handling this whole concern that people have expressed about the dispersal of classified information. We have done it in the past, and I'm confident that we can do it with regard to these 5 individuals.
And I've been raising concerns for a while now about the possibility of establishing a so-called indefinite detention regime. And recently, a statement rejecting indefinite detention without charge was issued by more than 130 former members of Congress, diplomats, federal judges, prosecutors, high-level military officers, and national security experts representing the full political spectrum. The declaration said this: instituting a system of indefinite detention without charge in the United States for terrorism suspects would threaten the constitutional protections enshrined in our justice system and is simply bad policy. General, can you tell us yet whether there will be any Guantanamo detainees who will be neither prosecuted nor transferred to another country, and is the administration currently contemplating holding some detainees without trial for an indefinite period of time?
The possibility exists that at the conclusion of our review with regard to the detainees, the people who are held at Guantanamo, that there will be a number of people who we will seek to detain under the laws of war. We will do so in a way that is consistent with due process to make sure that those determinations are made in a way, as I said, that ensures that the decision is based in due process and that reviews are done on a periodic basis to ensure that anybody held under that regime remains a danger to the country and should continue to be held. But that possibility does exist.
In a status other than as prisoner of war?
No, under the laws of war. These would be people who would be held under the laws of war.
Well, we will need to pursue this at greater length later, but I want to flag my concern again. As several senators have already discussed, we were all devastated by the tragedy at Fort Hood. It's been especially hard for Wisconsin, and Senator Cole mentioned 2 brave Wisconsin soldiers were murdered and several more were injured, and I know that the President has ordered a thorough government-wide review of what the United States government knew and what went wrong, and I'm sure my colleagues in the committee will be very interested in the outcome of that. I appreciate that there's not a lot you can say in public now, and it's important not to jump to conclusions and especially not to jeopardize the murder prosecution, but I hope the review will be expedited. You discussed with Senator Leahy sharing the results of your review with members of this committee, which I appreciate, but I want the record to be clear. Will you commit to making public to the greatest degree possible the conclusions the executive branch reaches so that the American people and most of all the families who lost loved ones have an opportunity to understand what, if anything, could have been done to prevent this tragedy?
Yeah, in a way that's consistent with ensuring that we don't do harm to the potential trial. I think it is our obligation to make clear to this committee, to the American public, what the results of our investigation are, so that we have a way in which, working with this committee, we prevent further tragedies like occurred at Fort Hood.
General, during town hall meetings and other exchanges I've had with a lot of Wisconsin law enforcement people over the last several years, I've heard that progress has actually been made in combating methamphetamine production and use, which is good news. Unfortunately, there's also been a significant increase in heroin coming into the state, quite possibly as a replacement for meth, and this heroin is often very pure and therefore very dangerous. Wisconsin law enforcement reports not only is that there's increasing violent crime associated with heroin trafficking, but there's also been a disturbing increase in heroin-related deaths. Rock County, my home county in south central Wisconsin, has already had 12 heroin-related deaths this year, and I'm concerned this may be part of a larger nationwide trend. Senator Cole and I have addressed this increase in Rock County by requesting that it receive funding through the High-Intensity Drug Trafficking Assistance Program. But I'd like to know whether this trend is emerging in other states, and what steps is the Department taking to reduce heroin trafficking in Wisconsin and elsewhere?
Well, we certainly have seen an increase, chiefly from Mexico, in the movement of heroin into the United States. The problem that you've identified in Wisconsin is one that we see in other parts of the country. I know that Baltimore has a particular heroin problem, but we see it in other states as well. The Department of Justice, in conjunction, well, the DEA is part of the Justice Department, is using all of the tactics we have, all of the skills we have to try to get at that emerging heroin problem. I think a lot of people thought that heroin was a problem of the past, but the concern that you are raising is a very, very legitimate one, and one that we are focusing on. We have to combat heroin yet again, and we are doing so.
Thank you, General. Thank you, Mr.